All right, excuse me. I'm going to call the work session to order. It'd be more fun to talk about the Seahawks, but I just want to reintroduce Rob Roscoe from WCIA. He's going to give us a presentation on council do's and don'ts.
Yeah. Well, thank you for inviting me out tonight. My name is Rob Roscoe. I'm the Deputy Director of Washington City's Insurance Authority. We provide the City of Sequim's insurance. We are not an insurance company, though, per se. And there's a unique difference that I like to highlight. We were created back in 1981. Primarily because, unfortunately, municipalities are not a very good insurance risk. What happened was insurance coverage was getting very expensive. Municipalities were frustrated with having little say or control in how claims were being handled. So they decided to create their own insurance company. It's a way for them to self-insure without taking on the entire risk themselves. We started out with 8 municipalities in the Puget Sound region. We've since grown to over 165 different members throughout the state of Washington. I go all over the state providing this presentation to councils. Please do not let me stand up here the whole hour and talk. I'm not that interesting, as you'll soon find out, especially dealing with insurance issues. The last thing you want is me talking about insurance for an hour. But I'm here to hopefully answer any questions you might have regarding your role as a council member, concerns you may have for the city of Sequim with liability issues. This is what I'm here for, is to hopefully try to answer those questions you may have, either as an elected official or being in that role as an elected official. One of the big benefits of being a member of WCIA, I'll give you a little bit of background too. I've been involved with WCIA now for 26 years. I started in 2000, was a risk management rep. I left in 2005 and went to work for a municipality. So I went from being working for WCIA to actually being a member of WCIA. So I know what it's like to actually be a member of the authority as well. I worked for the city of Auburn for 12 and a half years, left as the director of human resources and risk management. And then I got offered the opportunity to come back to WCIA. I think what happened was I was on the executive committee, as is your city attorney, Christina. And I think I asked way too many questions and my boss wanted to shut me up. So she decided to bring me back in-house. So I went from being one of her bosses to now working for her. And you know what they say about karma. No, it's been great. I really enjoy being back at the authority. I've been back for 8.5 years now. Unfortunately, it has been some very trying times, and I'll go over some of those issues that we're facing as an organization, as well as issues that all municipalities in our state face as well. We do not insure any state or county agencies. So it is only municipalities or municipal agency, like an interlocal government agency, which is what WCIA is. I'm a public employee. So we do not underwrite for profit. I'm not trying to charge you an excessive amount to meet any sort of demands on policy or shareholders or what have you. We just have to try to cover our costs. And unfortunately, those costs have been pretty extraordinary the last few years. And again, there's a number of different issues impacting that. The bond market certainly didn't help for a period of time as well, where we looked on paper, lost $20 million in 1 year. Now, it was a paper loss, but it still hurt our financials. So it's things like that that we're struggling with. But part of the benefits of being a member of WCA is really the insureds own the insurance company. You get to decide coverages, limits, and make key decisions as to how we operate as an organization. We don't operate in a vacuum. We like to keep our members very informed as to what's going on within their city with claims and litigation. We have delegates that are assigned that we communicate with all those issues on a relatively routine basis. We really pride ourselves in providing training for cities. We don't tell you how to operate the city of Sequim. That's your role as legislators, as city managers, to deal with the day-to-day functions of city staff, as well as council with your legislative process. We're not here to tell you that. We're here to tell you about what are the potential exposures with what you do and how to try to minimize or mitigate those damaging effects from those decisions to help you try to reduce those claims from ever occurring in the first place. So we assign a lot of trainings, pre-defense reviews. We try to give our members the best resources they can have to help prevent claims from ever occurring in the first place. I always tell members, because we understand it's very expensive. No one likes to see that insurance bill on an annual basis. Best way to reduce those costs is not have claims in the first place. So that's the best thing any member could do, is not have those claims. Unfortunately, you can do everything right and still incur costs, either in defense or even indemnity payments sometimes, just because the nature of the way things end up, and people can get hurt by the services you may be providing, either on your roads, your sidewalks. You have a lot of infrastructure, your utility lines. Things can go wrong and people can either get damaged or property can be damaged. So that's where we come into play. Coverage decisions also are made by our executive director, Ann Bennett. She's been involved with WCIA for 30 years now. So we have some good experience. This is all we do, and we're pretty familiar with the exposures, with what you face on a daily basis. And I will tell you, when there's a large claim, first thing insurance companies like to do is look at that insurance contract, look at the fine print, look at the exclusions, and see whether or not they actually have to pay. They have responsibilities. We, on the other hand, look at those issues because we have a fiduciary responsibility to the whole pool, but we're also looking to find ways to grant coverage. We like to grant coverage for our members rather than try to exclude coverage, because we know this is what we're here for. We are your insurance company to provide those dollars when you need them to pay for those claims and liabilities. So the nice thing too is those coverage decisions are made by Ann Bennett, and they're appealable to the executive committee, comprised of members who sit on the executive committee. So when you have an issue, you're not fighting a big insurance company, you're fighting other peers within your own organization. Yes. Oh, can you?
So the members of the executive committee, they one of them I know is an attorney, and one of them we now know is you. And so
No, I used to be.
You used to be.
Now I'm a staff member. Yes.
Okay. So is the executive committee membership only for city attorneys, or it's any?
It's comprised of delegates who get voted on by the full board. All the members choose. You can run as a delegate to be on the executive committee. So if you decide to throw your name in the hat, you then have to be voted on by other members. And it's usually comprised of delegates, can be either city manager, director, city clerks. It's whoever is assigned by the city to be that delegate, or alternate delegate can run.
And if I may be so bold as to jump in, Rob, it is operational, right? It is typically on staff who are on that. It's not typically elected officials, and I'm not aware of any elected officials.
No, it's only staff. We don't have elected officials on our board. Yep.
Thank you for clarifying.
Of course. We provide $20 million in liability limits. We insure the first $5 million ourselves. And then we have to buy what's called reinsurance above that. And I have to go out there and sell our exposures to the market and convince them that they want to take on WCIA as a client to insure that other $15 million to get us to that $20 million rate. That's been extremely difficult. I will tell you, in 2022, we had 2 large reinsurers pull out of the state of Washington. Basically said, no more. We can't underwrite it for a profit. So that reduced our ability to even find carriers willing to underwrite us. We used to have $4 million in self-insured retention. We had to raise it this year because our reinsurers demanded it of us. They said it was too much of a working layer, which means we've hit it and breached it too many times. So we had to increase our self-insured retention to $5 million. So we take on the first $5 million of every liability loss. We also offer property, and that's optional for members, but 99.9% of the members are also insured for property, as well as our crime and fidelity and cyber and other exposures that you may have as a municipality. Can you? Insurance is a very cyclical industry. There's cycles that we call it a hard and soft market. Hard markets where it's tough underwriting, we have to provide a lot of information. Rates just go through the roof. And just to give you an example, my reinsurance rates from in 10 years have increased over 700%. I used to pay 5 cents per worker hour. Now we're paying close to over 40 cents per worker hour. It's just been that brutal of a market. And what's driving it, unfortunately, are large verdicts. That's hard for carriers to underwrite for a profit when one verdict can erode 20 years worth of premiums. So, and that is inherent, unfortunately, with the public exposure. And I'll go over what's driving that primarily is Washington State does not have any what's called tort caps. So when there is a loss, it could be funded to whatever the jury deems you're responsible for. Sometimes they want to get punitive, even though punitive damages is a separate cause of action, but they lump it into their general damages as well, trying to set an example as to let's send a message type of tone. Well, that gets very expensive then. And firsthand, we've lost from 2018 to 2022, I think it was close to $90 million because of the increased verdicts and judgments against members. So again, because of that, we've had to make tough decisions. And unfortunately, we've had to raise rates. We're not happy about that. We know that comes out of your general fund that limits your ability then to provide other services for your residents. We don't want to do that. Unfortunately, we have to do that to stay financially solvent and make sure that we're there to pay for those claims for our members. The good news is property market has since softened. So liability is still hard. Property, my last renewal, I had a nice decrease. So WCIA, we try to keep our rates as stable as possible. We know you have budgetary issues. Some members are on 2-year budget cycles. We don't want huge fluctuations. We try to keep them as stable as possible without avoiding the highs and the lows and try to keep it as even as we can. But at the same time, we had to have tough decisions. And we know members are kind of frustrated with us over that, but we're not alone. It's throughout the state. Every risk pool has done the same thing to their members because these increased costs are there. Good news though, property, I think for the next few years should remain relatively flat, if not stable. And we are seeing some flattening in liability as well. Now, our costs are still there, but we're now budgeting for that accordingly. So hopefully we'll see some flattening in the next few years. Just to give, these are just some headlines, just what we're struggling with. State of Washington was hit with a $100 million verdict. We thought that that would be a talking point for the legislature to start looking at some possible tort reform. Unfortunately, they didn't blink an eye. All they did was a budget amendment. And that had to do with the unfortunate death of Susan Powell's kids. She was an individual that was missing. Her body, I don't think, has ever been found. But the ex-husband was suspected of murder, but never convicted. And the court, he had court-ordered supervision of his kids. So he took the kids and brutally murdered them and himself in suicide. And the state was found liable because the plaintiff basically said, we didn't tell you you had to have home supervised or a visitation. You could have met in a public place. Well, no one foreseen that criminal conduct of a dad with his children. But $100 million, to me, should have sent the message to the state that maybe we need some kind of reform here, because that is unduly burdensome for government agencies to have to try to fund too. And this is not isolated. City of Seattle, I think it was last week, $30 million for the CHOP victim who had a gunshot wound, and failure to render aid, which is a new cause of action. Usually you don't have a duty to render aid to an individual that's harmed, but that survived a summary judgment motion and went to a jury, and they determined $30 million. So that's very difficult. Town of Stillicum, one of our members, $15 million for a drowning. It's that hard. How am I going to recover $50 million from a city? Next slide. And we've done some research on this. And Washington State, because we have what's called joint and several liability with no tort caps, which means you're usually going to be that deep pocket if there's not enough insurance to cover the damages for someone who's injured or harmed. So if you have someone that is negligent free and there's 2 or more people at fault, they can collect the entire judgment from any at fault party. So if you're even 1% at fault, you could be on the hook for any jury verdict, regardless of your own comparable fault. And that's tough, especially when we're dealing with engineering, with crosswalks and roads. And I'll go over some of those issues here in the next few slides. But those are the things that really make it burdensome for us that we have to then underwrite to and prepare for those type of verdicts to fund if we need to. Next. So your role as counsel, there's good news and bad news. Start with the bad news. Again, you're going to be a target for potential litigation because of your role as a city council or as a council member. The good news is we don't see it a lot anymore. We used to see it earlier on in the 1990s, 2000s, where plaintiffs were naming individual council members in litigation. Now we don't see that hardly at all. I can't remember the last time we had individual council members sued. Not to say it can't happen, but there are some really good defenses when you're acting as a council as a whole and not as an individual. So when you're communicating, it's important that you're collectively acting as a city council. When you start acting individually is where you have some potential exposure, especially when you're dealing with social media. And again, I'll go over some of those issues. Or you send out notices from the desk of or from the office of, and it's your own opinion and not the council's opinion. That's where you can have some potential exposure for someone claiming you did something wrong. So when you act as a committee or as a council, there's good defenses, legislative immunity, discretionary immunity, things like that, that we can then plead to protect the city and yourselves. Next. Land use. This is a huge area of concern for WCIA. I used to work for the city of Auburn. One of the first things I did when I worked there was convince the mayor and council to extricate themselves from acting in a quasi-judicial role. Because once you do that, you have the appearance of fairness doctrine that you have to rule on matters acting like a judge, and you have to leave your personal opinion at the door. You can't bring it into that decision-making process. And a lot of times that goes counter to your own beliefs as to why you ran for office in the first place. You may have an opinion on certain matters that you want to rule upon. But if the facts aren't there in the record, you can't make those decisions. You have to go for what's on the record in front of you, not what you're hearing at public comment or at the supermarket or from your neighbors, because that's not in the record. And that's hard to unring bells that you're hearing. So we're big advocates for making land use decisions, going to a hearing examiner, and then appealable to Superior Court. The more you can do that, the better off you are from a protection standpoint in WCI's perspective. One of our worst cases, city of, we can go back to it. Westmark v. Burien. Burien was a newly incorporated city, vested under King County laws. And Westmark was going to block some views of Puget Sound, some council member views, unfortunately, and they weren't happy with it. And they kind of delayed the development process, turned into 3 different lawsuits. We spent close to $13 million when everything was said and done. So these things can be very expensive and be very prolonged. I also mentioned development agreements because those can be creative tools for cities to kind of go outside of their own zone and codes, but be very careful about them. Some of you may have heard about the city of Cle Elum recently. They had a development agreement that went sideways, and they often do go sideways because there's a lot of facts and conditions in those agreements, and it's a contract. So it turns into a breach of contract. It's not a tort. WCIA provides coverage, $20 million in liability coverage for torts, not for breaches of contract. And we also sublimit land use because we've had such bad examples and bad issues over these claims. So what sounds good today as well may not be good 15 years from now when you have a new city council, and these development agreements can be prolonged. We had one member that they thought the development agreement had expired. It had. Under the dates that were in the contract, it had expired. But the developer then sued the city, claiming the only reason it expired was because staff dragged their feet and delayed the process. So they thought it had expired and they didn't have to conform with these terms, and the court disagreed, saying, yes, you do, because it was your fault that you let it expire. So you thought you're out, and then they bring you back in. So be very careful about those agreements because they can be very difficult and can be prolonged for litigation. And they're not covered per se by WCIA. Personnel, you have an executive branch. There are a number of laws designed not to protect you or the city, but to protect employees. And that can be very complicated and overlapping. And what's legal today may not be legal tomorrow and vice versa. So my key here is do not insert yourself in personnel matters. Let human resources, city attorney, city manager deal with those issues as they arise, because it can be very complicated, and we've seen council that want to do well, but then get misinterpreted. And what I mean by that is your intent is irrelevant. You may not be trying to be offensive or harassing or discriminating, but if it's perceived by others that it is inappropriate, that's what's telling. And that's where if someone tells you to please stop a certain behavior, do not argue about the offensiveness of it. Just stop the behavior. That's the easy part, is just don't continue behaving in that manner if you're told that it's inappropriate. Because again, your intent is irrelevant. It's how it's perceived. We have had council that looked at the staff directory as their own personal Tinder account. Not okay. I wish I could make this stuff up. I mean, seriously, we've been around too long and we've seen too many claims and litigation over these issues. But staff have a role, and you have a position of power, perceived power. And unfortunately, if staff is violating, they have administrative remedies and rules and procedures that they can investigate and put an end to. If the mayor is harassing an individual, I can't fire the mayor. You're an elected official. So it's very burdensome and onerous on the city from an HR perspective. I will tell you, we have $20 million in liability coverage as long as you're acting within the course and scope of your duties for the city. If you're told to stop a certain behavior and you continue to do so, you may be stepping outside of that role as a city official. Now your own personal assets could be exposed because now coverage wouldn't attach because we only cover you as an elected official. So that's my scared straight speech. Now, also, if you see inappropriate behavior, you're the city of Sequim. Please forward that to the city manager, city attorney, so that they can take appropriate actions to make sure that behavior ends. So if you witness people engaging in inappropriate conduct or behavior, please don't turn a blind eye, but report that to the proper channels as well. You can go next. Don't say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, that was the city's fault. Don't worry, we'll take care of it. That could be a legal conclusion that we may not be responsible for. We had one situation. It's a downtown area where you had some pretty strict codes with what businesses could put on their siding. And Joe calls the mayor up. Hey, mayor, I want to put stucco on my building. Is that okay? Mayor says, sure, Joe, it sounds great. So he hires a contractor. They're out there putting stucco on the building. Code enforcement comes by and red tags them, saying this does not conform with the downtown code. You need to put XYZ siding on, or whatever the code said it was. Is that a problem? That's a problem. He calls us up, says, Rob, Joe just filed a claim for damages. And I go, well, Mayor, did you tell Joe he could put stucco on his building? I did. Well, he relied upon that to his detriment. We're going to pay that 99.9% of the time. So again, be careful about your words, and don't be afraid to tell individuals to check with staff. Here's the number of the planning department. Here's public works. Here's utilities. Let staff be the experts. Don't insert yourself in that role or take matters in your own hands, because that can then lead to some potential claims. And that's the last thing we want to see happen. Next. You have a lot of public meetings. Sometimes there could be some code enforcement issues that you have to take action against certain individuals. Please refrain from referring to them as slumlords or any sort of derogatory term in a public setting, because that could come back and create potential issues. Now, public officials have a higher threshold and standard, unfortunately, than other individuals in the public. But any untruth could give rise to a potential claim if you're making those statements in a public setting. So be careful about what you say and what you refer to certain individuals as, or their conduct or their property, because that could come back and turn into a potential defamation claim. There's actually a case out of Spokane and had to do with a deputy that was terminated. The sheriff terminated him for making some inappropriate comments over the radio. He sued for defamation and won to the tune of $20 million for defamation. He wasn't shot. He was not a paraplegic. It was a defamation claim that turned into $20 million. What's really frustrating there, too, is I read about it in the paper. And the county is part of a county pool, similar to like WCIA, a risk pool that they purchase insurance from. And they say, well, the county had $1 million self-insured retention, and the rest was covered by insurance. Well, it's not covered by insurance. It's covered by other public agencies, and it's all taxpayer dollars that ultimately comes back to everybody having to pay. But the frustrating part is they look at it as, well, it's insurance money, so it's okay. Well, it still has a cost, and those costs are, again, very high and keep rising each year. I will spend some time here in public works, as we like to call it, politically engineering issues, because you'll hear a lot from your residents about problems on their streets, wanting stop signs, wanting crosswalks, wanting speed limits changed to make it safer or make it faster for their commute, what have you. And my key here is these oftentimes turn into negligent engineering claims. And when you have someone that's been damaged or injured, and remember we had a modified joint and several liability. So you could have a child in a crosswalk or a passenger in the car who are fault-free. They've done nothing wrong. And they're then injured. And if there's not enough insurance to cover the damages, they're going to try and find a deep pocket. And they're going to try and say, well, the city was at least at fault because you have $20 million in liability coverage, whereas your average driver has $20,000 in liability limits, the state minimum. Which one would you rather have if you're the injured party? The $20 million. So you're oftentimes going to get dragged into litigation, even if there's really not a lot of fault on what you've done. But we're then going to have to prove that it was designed safely and met AASHTO, MUTCD standards, whatever engineering criteria it is at the time, saying that this was well done. And if we don't have those traffic warrants and things are done arbitrarily, it limits our ability then to defend the city. So that's where it's very, I caution you about making those decisions. Let the engineers do it. Do traffic studies. And don't refer to, I had one city council member refer to their traffic circle as the circle of death. In open session numerous times. There was an article about it. It's a perfectly fine traffic circle. He just doesn't like traffic circles. So he refers to it as the circle of death. Now, if someone's then injured, you think that's going to be used against the city? It's going to inflame damages, and they're going to try to say that there was something wrong there. And then we're going to have to go to court, and we're going to have to take his deposition and ask him where he got his traffic engineering degree from. Oh, he doesn't have one. This was just his opinion. And we don't want to have to do that. If you've ever been deposed, you know it's not a fun process. I've been deposed a couple of times when I worked for a municipality, and they want to try to say that you've done something wrong, and they'll try to trip you up any way they can. So again, opinions are fine, but please refrain from referring to your streets or your roads as dangerous or unsafe. It may need to have further studies done, but if you start referring to things as dangerous or unsafe, it leads the public to think that there's a problem that wasn't fixed. And that's where it depends on what the criteria is that's best left to the engineers to review through those studies. And by openly making those comments, you could be inflaming some potential claims against the city because of that. Also, when you start arbitrarily putting in stop signs and monkeying with traffic codes, it's a system. And what impacts here could have huge impacts down the streets to 13 other different intersections. So you may have people that want something done, and then you do it, and then you have 200 more people complaining about what was done. So just be very careful about that. What seems like a good idea may not be. And I know it's well-intended. A lot of people want to do what's good for their roads, and they think that it may be a danger because there was an accident there. But if you're referring to it as dangerous in session, that can inflame damages. So be very cognizant about that fact. Okay. Exec session. Boy. You know, it's more sacred than Vegas. What goes on in exec session needs to stay in exec session. I can't state that enough. It could have some big implications. Where I worked in the past, we had a council member that was leaking information to the press. And that's where council had their own rules and regulations. And that's where you guys have to self-govern yourself over these processes. But if we go to exec session and I'm talking about litigation, and I tell you my authority is, let's just say $5 million, but I'm trying to settle this for a reasonable amount, lower than that. And I go to mediation and the other side tells me, well, I know your authority is $5 million. The only way they knew that was because we had a leak in exec session. So if we suspect that there's a leak coming from exec session, guess what? I'm not going to fill you in on what we're doing then. And that's not how we want to operate. We want to make sure that we're filling our members in on how we're proceeding over litigation. But if we can't trust what's being said stays in exec session, then we're going to extricate ourselves from that process and not fill you in on it. So again, please, please, please do not talk to your spouse, your neighbor, your significant other over what is said. This is the one area where you can have those frank discussions over personnel, collective bargaining, pending litigation, anything that qualifies for an exec session, that's where you can have that. Otherwise, as you know, it's a potential public record. And we work in a fishbowl. So everything we say and do is a potential public record outside of that. And that's where we get into, you can go to the next one, get into the social media and emails. Again, everything we do and create is that potential public record. I carry two phones. I have my personal phone and I have my WCIA phone. I do not conduct city or WCIA business on my personal phone, and I don't use my city or my WCIA phone for personal business. I keep them separate. And there's actually a lot of case law over this, that if you start using your personal cell phone or computer, it's subject to potential discovery. And the courts can review that and look at your hard drive. And that's the last thing we want counsel to have to do, is turn over their personal computers to a judge to review to see whether or not you violated the Public Records Act in disclosure. So please, please, please. And I also should say, if you violate the Public Records Act, that's a fine and penalty. That is not covered by WCIA. We cannot indemnify you for breaking the law. And that's what you're doing in essence, is you're being subjected to a fine and a penalty for not disclosing a public record. So that's not covered by us or any insurance company. So be very cognizant about that fact. Also, emails and forwarding emails, because emails could create a Open Public Meetings Act violation. And this is where I say, go to your city attorney. They can be your best friend over these issues, but you want to avoid forwarding emails asking people how they're going to vote. That could be conducting city business in a private setting, violating that OPMA issue. So be very cognizant of those facts, especially with your forwarding and looking in reply all emails. So be careful about those. Social media as well. It can be a great tool. Nextdoor, all those fun platforms that you can hear from your residents on. But be very careful about public comments and turning those on. Because if you turn those on, you cannot now start censoring and excluding individuals. And once you create that potential public forum, you have to allow people their First Amendment rights to post accordingly. And we've had situations where you had some very offensive individuals posting comments and people then censored them. And then we had claims of violating their First Amendment rights. That's where we come in and we had to defend and indemnify some pretty ugly situations. So we don't want to have to do that again. So please, please, please don't turn on those public comments if you're using social media in that regard. Also, you want to try and keep them separate. You have the right to have your own personal life still, but if you start using your personal Facebook or own accounts to conduct city business, that's where you then could be crossing that line and creating then that public record, which the city would have to reproduce the metadata on, which they can't necessarily do if you're doing it at your home as well. So just be careful about blurring those lines over those media accounts, because it's easy to do. And that's where you don't want to be conducting city business on your personal accounts. If you have a city account, stick to city business and be careful about those public comments. I would encourage you not to have them turned on because of that fact, but that's up to you to determine. I think that's it. Next. Questions for me? I've done a lot of talking. Concerns, issues, we're all versed now, comfortable, happy we're there. And again, I do thank you for your service. I do know it's a lot of time you dedicate as an elected official, and it's a lot of reading if you're going to do your homework. So thank you for that.
Does council have any questions? Or are you scared straight? Or while council is thinking, if it's okay with council, I'd like to ask a question. Going back to quasi-judicial appearance of fairness and things like that, how much of that, if anything, does that apply to appointed bodies?
Oh, if the appointed bodies are making decisions, it applies right there. So anytime an appointed body like a planning commission, if they're vested in making a rule or a final decision-making authority, same thing applies. The appearance of fairness doctrine and the quasi-judicial role and ruling as to what's in the record and just in the record. And that's where things can get blurred very quickly. So our caveat is to punt all those issues to the hearing examiner just for those areas because of that concern. And we've seen it where, again, it's well-intended, but things can get taken out of context. And we had an adage, no good deed goes unpunished for a reason. Usually you're trying to do well by something, but it can go sideways very quickly and get very expensive, either in defense or indemnity. But thank you. Appreciate your time.
I feel like there are some council questions
Of
here.
course.
I'm kind of an anomaly. I worked for the city of Sequim for 35 years before I did this.
And you decided to go on council. Well, good for you.
Yeah, thank you. So is there any advice that you would give to me? Is I was the utilities manager.
Mhm.
And so I think I've worked with you, and I think I've worked with other staff members on many different things.
Probably have.
Yeah.
That's
so,
what we're here for, as a resource to our members.
Yeah.
No, I mean, you're now in a different role, and you just have to look at it as a legislative role now, not as staff trying to fix things, but more your job is to fix the budget and your codes and your ordinances and try and stay in that lane the best you can and not divert back into trying to fix things from a staff perspective. That's what you have city staff for. Your job is to look at the legislative issues surrounding the city, focus on the budget and those codes and ordinances and resolutions.
And if I may jump in to add a little bit more light on this, is that, because Pete is a little bit of an anomaly, right? And being with the city for so long, how did we get to this?
Yeah.
And so, maybe if you could talk a little bit more about how he could better draw that line between being asked for his memory and his institutional knowledge and still separate and not run afoul of any meddling or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, you probably know where all the things are buried, and as I said, and that's okay. That's important because you have that institutional knowledge, but it's also important that you don't then dictate and drive staff into what they should be doing. And that's a hard thing to try to separate, especially if you were a manager and had staff and want them to do certain things. Well, you're now not managing them. They have their own manager and they may have certain things that you may not be aware of. And that's the hard part, is you may expect them to act a certain way, but they may be acting another way because of directives that they've received. So try to just stay with that legislative role in that council as a body collectively and not individually.
So when they ask me a question, I'm giving them the answer. I'm not directing them at all.
No, and that's
So,
fine. Yeah.
Because I know that's a no-no, because I experienced that over my 35 years.
Definitely.
Quite a few times.
Well, good. Anything else? Well, again, I appreciate your time, and actually, I'm coming back next week to Port Angeles, so. Yeah, I do the tour. I go all over the state, but it's fun. This is what we like to do, and hopefully we're here as a resource for both council and staff. So thank you. Appreciate your membership.
And I will continue to be bold and commit Rob to this already. But if you think of any other questions that you have, please feel free to send them to me and I'll forward them on to Rob and see if we can get you some answers that way as well.
Yeah. All right. Have a good session tonight. All right. Thank you.
All right, we will close the work session and resume regular session in 15 minutes.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and call this meeting of the Sequim City Council on February 9th to order at 6 p.m. If council would please rise for the pledge. The city clerk could please take roll.
Counselor Kelly Berger.
Here.
Counselor Dan Butler.
Here.
Counselor Pete Temslin.
Here.
Counselor Brandon Janice. Counselor Harmony Rudder.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Nicole Hartman.
Here. If we could have a motion to excuse Mayor Rachel Anderson, who's out sick.
Second.
And do we have a motion to approve the final agenda?
And second.
Thank you. Okay, we have a ceremonial item tonight, which is a Red Cross Month proclamation. Whereas for more than a century, the American Red Cross has been at the forefront of helping Americans prevent, prepare for, and respond to both large and small disasters. And whereas families and communities rely on the American Red Cross in times of need, and whereas the American Red Cross relies on the generosity of the American people to sustain the foundation and carry out its humanitarian mission, and whereas in Sequim, the American Red Cross serves our community through dedicated volunteers who provide critical support when disasters occur. And whereas the American Red Cross helps ensure access to life-saving blood for patients in need and provides comfort, assistance, and resources to individuals and families facing emergencies. And whereas the American Red Cross provides 24-hour support to members of the military, veterans, and their families, and whereas the American Red Cross offers training in cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR, aquatic safety, and first aid to help community members prepare for emergencies. And whereas the American Red Cross strengthens the safety and resilience of the Sequim community, now therefore, I, Nicole Hartman, on behalf of Rachel Anderson, Mayor of the City of Sequim, and on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim March 2026 as American Red Cross Month and encourage all residents to recognize the important work of the American Red Cross and support its humanitarian role in our community, and honor the South Puget Sound and Olympics chapter contribution in helping make our city a better place. Signed on this 9th day of February, 2026. I believe we do have somebody here to accept this. This one.
The American Red Cross is symbolic of your government relationship, where it reads, "Do not work alone in isolation, but care for each other's community." That's what the Red Cross has done since Clara Barton saw the battlefields and thought, I want to be out there with the soldiers. We have never wavered from that. We have always offered assistance. Today, we have 3 of our volunteers. There's Denise, Marianne, and Heather. Between those 3 ladies, you have 41 years of service to your community. They respond day and night to help those whose homes have gone up in fires. We serve proudly our military community, as we always had since the battlefield of the Confederacy. And we will continue to do so because we work together with you, but most importantly, for you. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Syl Wiles. If any of y'all are interested in volunteering with us, come and see me. That is my job. And she said I had to introduce her to this way. So ladies and gentlemen, our chapter executive, Glenn Shannon.
Well, everybody said it before me, so I won't keep you long, but thank you all so much for having us. We've responded to a handful of fires already this month. We're always in your community doing a lot of different things, and we're 90% volunteer run. So the people that are sitting here with me do a lot more of the hard work than I do. And we thank you for letting us be a member of your community, and we're here for anything you all need. Thank you.
Let's see, so next we have public comment. And I understand we don't have anybody joining online, correct? Yeah.
I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor. Just before we move on, I just wanted to make a comment about my the amazing work that the American Red Cross does. And that thank you, ladies, and that I know I have a very, very good friend of mine who is very involved in your local chapter. And she, every time I talk to her, she has the most awe-inspiring, heartwarming stories of the amazing work that she does and that you all do together. So thank you, thank you, thank you for your service to the community.
Okay, so this is a time for public comment. Public comment is a limited public forum. Individuals providing public comment must not disrupt or otherwise impede the orderly conduct of the meeting. This is not a forum for hate speech. The City of Sequim supports the public's First Amendment right to free speech, but it does not support hate speech. Speakers are expected to be courteous and refrain from making hateful comments, sounds, or remarks. Any offensive words and conduct shared by the public do not reflect the city's values. The City of Sequim stands firm in its commitment to being an inclusive community and rejects discrimination of any kind.
All right, for individuals attending in person, please take a moment to silence your cell phones. In a moment, I will collect the public comment sign-in sheet. Each person will have 3 minutes to speak on any topic, and there will be a timer visible on the screen. A total of 30 minutes or 10 speakers will be permitted for public comments. When your name is called, please state your name if you are representing an organization and your city of residence. Our first speaker tonight is Michelle Rhodes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Rhodes. I am here on behalf of the Sequim Irrigation Festival. I'm the director for the 131st year, and I reside in Sequim, Washington. And I am actually just going to be introducing Lily Chemslin, our queen for 2025. And as she transitions from youth liaison to queen, she's going to talk to you all about what a successful year we've had. And she'll start out with our parade season.
Hi. This year, the Royalty Ambassadors have attended 17 community events, non-festival events, and have completed 3 platforms to date, 1 in progress, for approximately 75 hours of service by each Royalty Ambassador. The Royalty Ambassadors have spent approximately 180 hours representing our community at irrigation festival events and parades throughout the Western and Central Washington, combined total of over 1,000 hours of service. Of all of our parades attended, 8 were judged, and we received 2 2 second place prizes, and 6 first place prizes, including the Emerald City First Class First Place Award at Seafair, which was very exciting. We were featured on the Cairo TV and estimated attendance of 300,000 at Seafair Parade at the waterfront route, which was amazing. And finally, I would like to invite all of you to join us on February 31st at 6 p.m. at the SHS Auditorium for our Royalty Ambassador Scholarship Pageant, which I will hand over the crown, and it's very exciting. Yeah.
February 21st.
Did I say 21st? No,
You added a few days.
21st.
It's fine. So as you can see, thank you, Lily. We had an amazing year this year. This group of royalty ambassadors did a fantastic job representing Sequim Dungeness Valley throughout Western and Central Washington, and also within the community. And I just wanted to give her the opportunity to talk with all of you about the work that she and the other 3 have done this year, and encourage you all to come out on February 21st. We have 3 young ladies running and 1 gentleman running. And this year we actually opened it up to freshmen for the first time. And so 3 of them are freshmen, 1 sophomore. I'm kind of partial to 1. It's my daughter, so a little nervous. I'll be a little crazy. So if I seem extra frazzled that night, you'll know why. So thank you all for your continued support. We very much appreciate it.
Diana Lesby.
Okay, my name is Diana Lesbian. I live in Sequim. I'm here because I'm interested in your community statement regarding ICE, given what has happened in Minneapolis. Just wanting to make sure that our citizens feel safe in the community and that our city council supports keeping people safe where they can.
All right, our next speaker is Kay Snowhook.
I haven't been in front of one of these for ages. That's where it is. Thank you for opening this up to comments so that we can say something. And I'm in the same state of mind as Diana is, hoping that our community is going to be able to prepare ahead of time a little bit to know how we're going to handle things if we should get on the peninsula in a state that they're in Minnesota. And I did happen to look up your mission, vision, and value statements, which I saw you have up there. And I think if you keep these uppermost in your mind as you're contemplating how our police department, how people are going to handle if ICE comes here, that this will help to refer back to this. In the second item there of your organizational values, you have a stewardship section, and you talk about feeling that you are going to take responsible care of the community. And in the next statement where you have positive attitude, you say that you're going to try to continue that positive attitude. And none of us want this to turn into a, terrible negative thing. The next line talks about respect. And everyone in our community needs to remember the last 3 words that you have in that section. And it says, every person matters. And then down in the vision statement at the bottom, I just thought that a couple of the lines that would be helpful in working with this are living the organizational values that have already been put in place, and then encouraging creative problem solving. So I'm with Diana. We just want things to be looked at ahead of time so that we'll be prepared. So.
And that concludes public comment.
Okay, we do not have a public hearing tonight. Next thing is the consent agenda. If the city clerk could read off the list.
Items on tonight's consent agenda are claim vouchers totaling $712,215.94, City Council meeting minutes from Monday, July 26, 2026, and the CERT drone request, a letter of support.
Move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second that.
It's been moved to approve and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Do not have anything down for general business tonight, so we're going to go right into the information only section. City Clerk, if you'd like to do any introductions. Get this set up for the future land use map overview.
I think Travis Simmons is the senior planner, will be presenting the presentation for this evening for the work session.
Okay, Travis, you're up.
All right. So I'll let Heather get the PowerPoint up. But yes, hello, Travis Simmons, senior planner. And happy to be here. Happy to have more faces here. We've been kind of going through the rounds of planning commission, so it's nice to have some more folks that we get to share this with. But what do you got? Is it not on? Is it on? We good? All right. So yeah, so tonight we've got a few things to talk about. As part of our 2025 comprehensive plan update, we're going to briefly touch on the Planning Commission redlined version of that draft, and then we'll kind of get into how that is flowing into the future land use map update and some site-specific redesignation requests that we receive as part of the comprehensive plan update process. So Heather, you can go to the next slide. All right. So yeah, as mentioned, first thing we'll talk about PC redline draft, and then just an overview of what, and when you see FLUM or FLUME or FLUM, that is our future land use map. So that is essentially what the comp plan has designated as land use designations. And so part of the comprehensive plan update that we're doing will be putting the kind of the meat on the bones of what that is. And then the map itself is it's the picture of the work behind the scenes. So that it'll show you where the areas of SQUIM are designated for these types of uses, and then it will help us establish a zoning code that will then obviously create the zones by which land gets developed. So kind of starts at comp plan and then goes to zoning code, and there's two maps, and in SQUIM the maps are very, very, very similar. And then we do, as part of as part of every year, there's an annual amendment process where property owners and applicants have an opportunity to apply for site-specific redesignations of the comp plan or for text amendments as part of the comp plan. And so what we have done with this is since we're already in it, we've rolled those amendments into our update process. So it's all kind of on the same timeline. So, and then there's also just a few staff initiated changes as well as part of the process. So, all right, we can go next. So I will just kind of read from here, and if council has any questions, we might be able to pull Carla out of the stands here to answer them. But just kind of generally what we're doing, we've completed our Planning Commission redlined version of the draft comp plan. So it reflects the extensive work that we did pretty much all of 2025, during which each policy chapter was reviewed in detail on a chapter by chapter basis. So if you remember, we kind of at the beginning of 2025 took a moment to reflect and say, let's do this the right way for SQUIM. So the initial schedule was to have it completed by December, but after kind of assessing everything, we realized we needed to take some more time, do it right, and really put some thought into it. So we are on track for July in there, but I think it was really important to make that decision. And so what we've got now is a redlined version that shows planning commission's edits, staff edits, and it's color coded, illustrates proposed edits and staff from planning commission and staff, our initial reviews, select comments, recommendations from even the boards and commissions as well that help craft the content that drives the master or the comprehensive plan. So with that, we can go to the next slide. So it serves as the foundation for what we will release to the public on April 1st, and then we'll kind of get ramped up for public hearings. It'll go, it'll make its rounds before it gets obviously recommended for adoption. If you want to take a look at it, you can see it at the City of Sequim website. Just go ahead and search at the website for 2025 Comprehensive Plan Update, and that is where you will find everything you need to know about the Comp Plan Update. Various topics and chapters, and you can also go ahead and, if you want to get caught up on what's been discussed, the who's and the what's, you can review meeting minutes and videos from that same webpage as well. So any questions about the PC red line before we jump into land use? Okay, Carly, you get to stay seated. All right. So the part of the work, after we have kind of our policies and everything figured out, another part of the update, as you guys have been a part of since last year when we had the council retreat with Planning Commission and we talked about designations and land uses and all these things. This is kind of the first peek behind the curtain as to what we've kind of come up with. And so tonight we'll present each of the land use designations reflected on the future land use map. There's an attachment in the agenda that provides further detail if you're interested there. We did receive several site-specific redesignation requests. I believe initially it was 12, but we're now down to 10 or 11 after some folks have chosen to withdraw. After meeting with us and talking about some of the changes we're going to make that maybe didn't necessarily require a redesignation. So, and then also some city recommended changes based on all of our public outreach, staff meetings, planning commission meetings, stakeholder meetings, consultant meetings, all the meetings that really took up 2025 and have kind of culminated to now. So, but yeah. All right. So the first, maybe not the most exciting of our groupings here, but it is one that currently consists of the designations on the future land use map of agricultural conservancy, open space, parks, neighborhood parks, and schools. And so what we are proposing is to actually consolidate a number of those into a single public P designation, which will then also translate to a public zone. We'll leave the agricultural conservancy alone and we'll leave open space as it is. So no changes to those two, but we are identifying that it makes some good sense to put the public designations back on the map. And so this would be for properties that the city owns, that other government entities, Clown PUD, the schools, those will all go under the P designation and then ultimately the P zone. And so then this would, it makes it easier to administer for clarity for, when you want to apply to make to do something, it's more obvious what your options are. It doesn't exempt these properties from having to get permits and things like that, but it does at least provide clarity on like what that process is instead of, well, my zone is residential, but we're the school. So what does that mean? So like this way, it'll just be more clear that, hey, this is a public zone, this is a public designation, and they're going to do what they need to do to either, have small minor improvements, and we will permit it as necessary. So I guess, is there any questions on this one specifically before we questions, comments? And I guess just to lay it out there, that's how I kind of want to do this is as we go through each one, I'll pause and you guys can ask me any questions, share any comments instead of waiting till the end. So you can get them out now if you got them. But anything on this one? Yeah, go ahead.
Just to make sure I'm super, super clear at what I'm looking at.
Mm-hmm.
The document, this map that you've given us, this one is It's the city of Sequim with the proposed.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
So the images you'll see in the slideshow and on the printout are the proposed. There is one that I'll have a correction on that's different than what you see in the map. But yes, for the most part, this is with the site-specific redesignations per our recommendations, as well as the city initiated per our recommendations. So this is just like I said, kind of a peek behind the curtain, check temperature, make sure we're kind of on the right track, and we can keep moving forward towards getting these things to hearings. All right. No questions? All right, we can go to the next one. Okay, low density residential. This is probably our largest designated area and zone. It encompasses 870.7 acres of SQUIM. This is predominantly for lower density residential uses, historically single family residential. We received one request to be redesignated to low density residential, and that was a property that is currently designated highway commercial. And so the applicant that proposed this has a home that is in the highway commercial zone. It's been a developed single family home that predated the highway commercial even being basically layered over that. So it was residential, had a single family home, went to highway commercial, and now that they are non-conforming, they can't get permits. They can basically just maintain and stay in place. So we do recommend changing, and this is, I guess, to specify where the location is. It is on the south of the highway at the River Road interchange. And there are 4 parcels there that are currently highway commercial, and 3 of them are developed with single family residences. So our recommendation is to redesignate the 3 that currently have single family homes back to low density residential. We've reached out to all 4 property owners. We've heard back from 3. 2 were in favor. 1 was opposed. The one opposed has a vacant property, and you guys did get a copy of an email exchange between myself and that property owner. And so it is our recommendation that property remain highway commercial, as it sounds like they may have some plans for the property that are consistent with the current use. So we don't want to, take that away from them. But the other properties, we would like to bring them into a more conforming state so that if they do want to pull building permits for accessory structures and the like, that they're able to do so. So that's our at least our future land use recommendations. So Heather, you can go to the next slide, and I'll further expand on what that means for potentially zoning. So low density residential zoning update. We are proposing a slight increase from R48 to R49. And the main reason for that, and it's been discussed since we started talking about this back in 2025, was really just to line it up better with our increase of minor subdivisions to go up to 9 lots. So you have R49. If you have an acre, you could potentially develop that with a minor subdivision. So what this ultimately means is on a 1 acre lot, the yield difference going from 8 to 9 is about 1 unit. So you may get 1 additional unit. So it's not a major increase. It is very modest. But it does, how we are going to calculate this is we're going to allow it to be determined by gross acreage, which will have pretty much no impact on single family development because there are obviously, you still have to develop roads, all the things, infrastructure that goes into it. So your kind of assumed reductions out of that would be the same for a single family development that is going to have street access. But for developments that are going to do multifamily that can be more efficient with their land use, it may get them actually closer to realizing a full yield of that 9 units per gross acreage, whereas maybe single family may not. So and again, wouldn't be a huge increase or deviation from what is currently allowed. And their essentially the density allowance for both multifamily and single family will be the same. It's just how multifamily is able to be efficiently laid out may result in some developments having a few more units. So, and that's a big deal for local developers that we've talked to. You know, the way that it's currently laid out is that multifamily is not really, it's not incentivized enough is maybe the right way to put that. It doesn't pencil. You know, with the way that it's currently established, they still have to meet the same densities. So they still have the same, basically their return on investment is not as great as it would be for them to just keep doing single family. And so as part of the comp plan update, we obviously were given some allocations for housing types. Single family housing types, I believe we got 11 new ones, and I think we've already built those since the allocations were divvied up. So not to say that the city is providing these units, but we have to remove the barriers by which other types of units can be provided. So this is one of those attempts to do so. The other change that you'll see is that we are going to eliminate the maximum height overlay in part of the LDR and R48 zone. It's not meaning that now there's going to be huge buildings. It'll just be consistent with the rest of the LDR throughout SQUIM that allow you to do 2-story homes. So that's kind of the gist of our LDR and then prospective zoning updates. Any specific questions about this one? All right. Cool. Next one. Okay, community mixed use. So this is where we got a lot of requests from applicants to redesignate their properties to this community mixed use or CMU. This is the designation and zone where you see kind of our grocery stores, QFC, Safeway, and similar businesses like that. It also does allow for some multifamily. So I think that was a big driver in wanting some of these properties to be redesignated, is it just allowed them a little bit more flexibility in letting the market kind of decide what could work on these properties. So two of the properties are currently high-tech light industrial. They have just not really seen much activity in the way of developing, maybe as the city had hoped when the HTLI was established. And so by moving to community mixed use, it's an opportunity to kind of hit reset and see what would the market actually do with these properties. And those ones are recommended for approval. They're right there off of East Washington and just to the north of East Washington. So those properties, staff does recommend approving those to become CMU and just seeing what kind of the market would do with those. Another was a regional commercial property on the west end of town there off of West Washington, and it's the lower left picture there, kind of over by Walmart. So that's a piece of property that, in speaking with the owner, is not really adequately sized for a potential regional commercial use, and it's better equipped to do maybe some smaller commercial and or multifamily. And there were discussions, with Planning Commission and I believe also with Council back in 2025 about potentially how do we get residential on the west side of town. We talked about the nodes. You might remember that term, and having more kind of community-centered areas in parts of town. And so allowing residential in this area, it puts it near, jobs. It puts it so it could be workforce housing. That type of use could be realized there now, where it's currently not an option. So the staff does recommend approving that redesignation as well. So that piece would go from RC to CMU. And then lastly, there was a request for a low density residential parcel to be redesignated to CMU. This is one that it's in that bottom right. You can't really see it because it's not a huge parcel, and it's surrounded all by low density residential. And so it's Serenity House. They have a 17 unit kind of supportive housing facility there today. It is non-conforming. The building is needs some serious repair. The current code wouldn't allow them to do that. So it would be a non-conforming use and not something that they would be able to undergo under the current designation. So they had requested for that to become CMU. So when staff looked at that, the only dilemma we saw was that it would be essentially a spot zone or spot redesignation where you would have one parcel surrounded by all low density residential. And so we looked at alternatives to figure it out, and the state does, and you'll see this in the future, but the state does allow for cities to establish affordable housing exceptions in their code. So we are putting together a package. It's going to Planning Commission on the 17th as part of a Chapter 1821 code adoption, and as well as a Title 17 update. But mainly the point there is we felt it could be better solved with a code update rather than a redesignation. So we are not recommending that one. We would like it to remain low density residential, but we are going to look at adopting a code that Serenity House could utilize to make the most of their property. So I'll pause on that. Any questions about any of those specifically?
Thanks for the pause, Travis. I'm just to think through the last presentation you made on the creative alternative for Serenity and the intention long term to increase that sort of opportunity in our community and provide that, and just sounds like a very positive.
Yeah, and I can expand on that a little bit. And so the intentionality behind that was it was also so that it would become a process that could be utilized elsewhere as well. You know, if we had just done the redesignation, it would have been site specific. It would have been one time, one deal for just these guys. And by putting something into code, we are opening the door for affordable housing providers, folks that deal in subsidies, to potentially provide housing in a meaningful way throughout the community. You know, and that's a big part of what we were allocated as part of our comprehensive plan update, the under 80% AMI, and just trying to figure out how to provide that housing. Now, the city can't provide it, but what we can do is we can remove barriers that can allow developers to try to provide it. You know, it's not a guarantee that if we do this, it'll come. But as part of, you know, adequate provisions and all the things that we have to do for the comp plan to show that we're taking the steps and taking it seriously, that yes, these are things we have to do. This is one of those things that we can say we are doing something. We're not just saying we'll try. Like this is us putting code into action to try to allow something to happen. And then we'll obviously we'll work with those developers to try to make it a realization. And ultimately, just to further that, it will be a process that gets reviewed by city council. So like this wouldn't be a foregone conclusion. You just apply and you get it. It'll have to go through council and get approval. So yeah, we're thinking through it, and we're kind of excited with where we're ending up, but happy to answer any more questions. Or
it does sound really positive. I appreciate that, and as you know, and the rest of the council knows, I'm an advocate for this initiative. I am curious if there's a difference in the two methods, a code amendment or rezoning, in terms of public comment or the opportunities for the neighborhood to speak into the potential change.
Yeah, I mean, for the type of development that they're proposing, you know, what they would have to do if it was outright zoned would still probably entail public comment and outreach. What the different process is it doesn't put them in a box of a zone, and it kind of allows them to tell us what they need, and then we can put, you know, the council and staff can work with them to put guardrails on that. so that, you know, you do have a fit within on a case by case basis. It's like, okay, this works here because this, or maybe you get a comment from somebody and they say, hey, this could be an issue, and you can work with the developer and try to accommodate, you know, maybe I don't want to use the word mitigation, but try to resolve that. And so, yeah, it would be a conditional use permit. So we would have a little bit more reign on conditions we could impose, but through the new process, as opposed to, you know, if it was just a general site plan where you have development, bulk, and dimensional standards. I guess the only downside to doing it that way is they would have to just meet the standards of the code, and, you know, it's possible that even if this were CMU, that they would still run into issues that they would need relief from. And so by doing it this way, it really lets them kind of put it all on the table and say, here's what we really need to provide the thing that we're trying to provide. And then it gives the city and staff the opportunity to figure out, how do we best administer that? All right, we can go to the next one. Okay, downtown, the downtown district. So that this is made up of no changes on the flume or the flum, but we are proposing to consolidate our DMU 1 and DMU 2 into just a single DMU. There's really not much of a difference between them. I think there's like a single use that is different, and so we will work on kind of weaving those together so that it makes sense. But one use did not seem like enough to need an entirely separate zone. So we're just going to consolidate them into a single zone when we get there. We did get a single site-specific request, again, from a low-density residential property that wanted to become DMU 1. And so the staff's recommendation on that one is another one to not approve. And the reason being is it is on the south side of the street, and on the south side of that street is all LDR. So this would be another kind of site-specific spot redesignation surrounded by a different designation, different zone. And so it just didn't make sense to plop a DMU in the middle of that block there. And so we've worked with the applicant. We've had continued conversations. They've got a pre-app that they've recently submitted for to try to do something without the redesignation. And so through some of our Title 17 and Chapter 18 updates, there could be some opportunities for them to accomplish what they were trying to do through which they thought they needed the redesignation, but they may not. And it is my belief that they don't need it, and that we can get to what they want to do without it. And I guess it's a type of assisted living facility. So as the state has kind of loosened the reins on how those are zoned and administered and where they can be located, the updates that we're doing to be consistent with the state requirements will make that more of a possibility. So other than that, no changes proposed for the downtown as far as zoning goes. There may be some changes in how things are administered, but that is for a later conversation, but nothing major. Any questions on the downtown or our recommendation for that site specific? Go ahead.
Just curious, there's a different color block or parcel right at the corner of 2nd Avenue there, next to the public. I don't have
the purple one. Is that?
No, not the purple one, but the lighter orange colored one, reddish. It's a building.
Yeah, I think it's just, yeah. So one of the things we're playing with is having some transparency on the map so that you can actually see the structures on it. You know, historically, if you look behind you, that's what the maps of today look like, where you can't see the ground, you can't see any of the infrastructure or improvements. So we are trying to make the map more alive, modern, so that it actually, you can get a real sense of maybe what's there. But yes, I mean, happy to, if there's tweaks that can make it more clear that that's what it is, then we welcome that, because like I said, this is just a draft, and we have gone back and forth on shading on a number of parcels and things.
So it's the that's section. Gosh, I kind of want to go point to it on the projector behind me.
Yep. So it's DD. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because it's not the same color as the rest of the designated downtown district.
That color is a building.
Yes, I understand, but it is a DD designation.
Yes. So because of the building, and sometimes even some of the parcels that have green grass versus dead grass look a little bit different on the shading. So I mean, happy to, if there are any requests to either darken it or just make it stand out more, we can. Like I said, this is just a draft, so we want it to be easy to read and clear. So if it's not, then easy for us to go back and make some tweaks. Yeah, and Scott will do it for us. So Scott's our in-house GIS expert. He's also senior planner, and he prepared all these maps. So take it up with him. No. All right. Anything else for the downtown? Okay. So moving right along. All right. Regional commercial. We got, so I guess just to talk about regional commercial and some of the things that were discussed in the past, it was really laid out that this was an important designation and an important zone for the city for what it provides for, our tax base and everything, and was something that we really wanted to kind of continue to lean into as far as SQUIM is concerned. So it's an important one. There was discussions about residential. It just really didn't make sense. So that's where we kind of landed with doing the CMU redesignation over there. And so instead of allowing residential in the zone, we just do the redesignation because there are some vacant parcels left, and we'd like that to be retained for potential big box stores in the future or regional commercial of some capacity. But what we are proposing is maybe blending some of the uses from the highway commercial into the regional commercial, just so that there's, because they are in some ways centered around this interchange here at River Road. It makes some sense to have some of the shared uses. So some things you'll see are like travel services is a big one. And what that could include would be like a gas station, but there's already a gas station at Costco. So, it's not a far cry from what's already allowed there. We're just cleaning it up and making it more clear. As far as the site specific request we got, the big blue building right there on the River Road exit, property owner has had a time getting a tenant to stay there and be retained. And so there was a desire to potentially move on from the highway commercial zone that in its history is more auto-centric and auto-oriented. And so by moving to RC, it was viewed as this opportunity to have more uses come in and potentially get a tenant that could stay long-term. So what we are not recommending this one. And the reason for that is that we are confident that through changes in the zoning code as part of the highway commercial zone to allow more uses would be better suited for this property, as it's not very big. So regional commercial doesn't exactly make the most sense either. And you may have noticed that there is a new tenant. Straight Floors has moved in. And so they are eagerly awaiting some potential zoning updates. But yes, they were happy with the current zone for doing their vinyl wrapping, which is auto-oriented use. And so they were able to make the most of it for now. And then if the updates do happen, they would love to have their full business there. So this is one that it may not actually make it all the way to the end. This one we could see withdrawn if all goes well with our draft code updates. But like I said, that's not one we recommended because we think we can solve it through other avenues, and that is zoning updates. But regional commercial in its whole is, it's for big box stores. So any specific questions on this one? All right, we can keep on keeping on. Opportunity areas. So this is currently known, these are currently known as the economic opportunity areas. And really the name there came from, well, there was the opportunity zones, as you might recall, as part of the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that established opportunity zones in certain communities. The city of Sequim has an opportunity zone. The Bell Creek OA would be included in that opportunity zone, but the River Road OA is not. So even though these were kind of established in that likeness, one of them actually doesn't even qualify for using those, and it's a incentive program that is wrapping up at the end of this year. So what we are proposing, based on a lot of developer interaction, stakeholder interaction, is to really loosen up this zone from a not necessarily by adding new uses, but how those uses are developed. So currently there's a bunch of they are use mix thresholds is how it's referred to in code. And then there's percentage of uses in individual buildings. And they become very problematic for potential developers that want to come in, and maybe they're a larger entity and could bring some folks along. But if they're restricted to only 25% of the building footprint, it doesn't really pencil it. Where are they going to get the extra 75% to come in? You know, they could probably do smaller accessory uses and things to go with them, but to try to make it divvied up in a way that the code reads today has been a challenge. So we are going to propose, loosening that up and seeing what the market can do. And so we've dropped the economic because the economic was established as part of a HOVE study. I can't remember what the acronym there is, but it was essentially these properties were identified as properties that could be used for economic development. And so far, the only things that have gone in are some tribal property. There's some tribal development in the River Road opportunity area. The Bell Creek has remained completely untouched, and even a good portion of the River Road, other than a couple tribal developments, has been pretty much untouched as well. So the zone and the designation as was intended has not necessarily worked. Not to say that it couldn't, but our goal is to see can we get meaningful development there in a good way. And so let's kind of try to remove some of those restrictions and see what happens. So any specific questions on these properties? Go ahead.
I do have a question about the Bell Creek opportunity area. Mm-hmm. And I suppose there's nothing at this time is being considered there, but I think that I want to take a moment to just say that property is very special because there's a lot of what's the word? Mature Gary Oak trees on that property. And so I just want to say that, it's a very special property, and there's nothing to say at this time other than those are very important to our local, the local ecology of the area. So
agreed. And as current code reads, they can't go anywhere. So they would have to be preserved unless they're sickly. And you would have to have an arborist come out and actually support that claim. And so we want to really affirm that in any code updates we do, that they will stay to the most practical extent possible. So, like I said, they would need to be dying essentially for them to come down. And then also kind of with that, Bell Creek's also very notable there through that property. It's another big ecological feature for the city. and it is the FEMA floodplain map updates that we did last year have, and I don't believe that the map has been fully adopted yet. We're just kind of waiting for the final. But it is, once it is, the floodplain there has grown significantly. So there's a lot more property on there that would need to be thoughtfully developed, if not just left completely undisturbed.
Right. What does it take to change the designation to, for example, agriculture conservancy? Well, maybe that's the wrong one because it's wasn't farm land.
Yeah.
So how do we go about, what are your thoughts on that? Just
short of the city acquiring it and essentially setting it aside that way, it could be a challenge. I mean, the AG, the Agricultural Conservancy, is pretty uncommon in cities. There may be holdovers, kind of like what we've got that were established back in the day, but they're not as common anymore as. Yeah. Oh, Christina's saying it's in the Growth Management Act. Yeah, mandates of it to not create new ones, I would assume.
Sorry, thanks. As a reminder, the Growth Management Act's purpose is to have growth in the cities, right? Because that is the preeminent tenet of preventing urban sprawl. The whole premise, and Carla is going to be here to correct me if I misstate, but that is what the counties are supposed to do. They're supposed to be looking at preserving the ag areas and the critical areas and the open spaces and things like that on a far greater level than cities, because it is the city's job to accommodate growth and development. That's why we have to have appropriate infrastructure, water, sewers, streets, stormwater, all of those other types of things. And that's what they mean by urban development. And so by having a concentration of those ag and open space uses within the city, we are necessarily creating that urban sprawl by having too much of those areas in the community. So I'm going to look over at Carla, see if there's anything she wants to say. And I think we got the thumbs up, and thank you.
Yeah. And you can go to the next slide, Heather, because there's a little bit more just kind of take a look. But yeah, go ahead, Harmony.
Well, are we at our quota? Are we not allowed to have more green space in the city?
Green space, we can, like I said, short of the city acquiring it and making it a park to essentially take it off, then it'd be up to the property owner. I don't think we're going to come in and say this can't happen. Now, critical areas, their buffers, the floodplain, those are kind of established, right? Mm-hmm. And so those things may just organically, as development occurs, remain as green space through development. So even though development happens, this lovely picture, there's an opportunity for incorporated green space. So, maybe you have a trail network that goes through it, but other than that, it's left completely undisturbed. But the opportunity to essentially take it off the books per se is a bit of a challenge in the city.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So yeah, just to kind of further talk about this, so that opportunity zone that I talked about, the changes that we could see done come June, July of this year would not preclude anybody from trying to take advantage of that until the end. It is a bit of an arduous process from my brief research of it. So I don't know if anybody would be able to get it done in 6 months, but what we're doing wouldn't stop them from utilizing it. So if somebody had something that would work, that they could get the tax breaks and stuff on, more power to them. And we wouldn't be getting in the way of that. So again, just our goal is to allow the market to better respond while still implementing smart planning practices. And, the opportunity areas are important. They're the gateways to the city, specifically the Bell Creek one. So we would welcome the opportunity to, retain what we can and have some good, thoughtful development happen. But yeah, any other questions on this one specifically?
First of all, thanks for indulging our zoning 101 session here. This is really helpful to me. And I'm not sure if this is specific to what you just said or not, but thinking back in the last couple of minutes causes me, I look at the map and think of spaces that are currently agricultural, kind of given to Harmony's question there, but they don't show up as agricultural here. They show up as either the opportunity zone or the LDR or something like that. But we can think as we drive through Squim that there's, cows in pastures and there's crops being grown and harvested and so on. So those things are just simply legacy that property exists on land that a future owner could do something different with.
Correct. Okay. And there's another layer in all of this that is, it's city adjacent, but it's the county, and that's your land use code, your tax code. So you may have property that is zoned for residential, but then you're being taxed on open space because that's how you've designated it through the county. And so then if somebody did want to come and develop it, did have to have that changed to the proper code, and then you may have back taxes to pay. So there are parcels that it may be a challenge to get that to happen, but we wouldn't preclude it from happening. It would be, property owners or the assessor saying, pay us some money.
and the flip of that is that if a current property owner looks at this proposed map and says, oh my goodness, you've changed the designation or you're changing the label on it, they don't have to panic that suddenly the use of their property needs to change.
Yeah. And thanks for bringing that up, because one of the important parts of what we're doing is anybody, like the properties that are changing, we think it's really important to have these conversations. So specifically to like the LDR or the highway commercial going to LDR, even though only one property owner reached out to us, it was an opportunity to kind of have our foot in the door to go approach the others and say, hey, you're in the same situation where you've got a non-conforming use also. Are you interested? Because your neighbor has applied for this redesignation. And so we appreciate and we respect people's property rights, and we want to make sure that their voice is heard and that they're represented, right? So we will be, we'll reach out as necessary throughout the process. So, and we have, yeah. All right. HTLI. So shockingly, nobody has wanted to be redesignated to HTLI. There's just people trying to change from it. This is our high-tech light industrial designation and zone. When it was established, it was another similar to the OAs or the economic opportunity areas. We have a set of zoning standards in the current code that are the business and employment areas. And so it is our opportunities areas and the HTLI. Obviously, the reason behind that was that these were the zones and designated areas that were supposed to carry the weight for economic growth. We have not seen it happen the way that it was hoped. And the property owners that are holding it are, I think eager to see some change in the zone so that they can realize maybe some development on the properties. As I talked about earlier, we've had two go from HTLI to CMU that were proposed. There's another coming up where we've got another HTLI that is requested to go to highway commercial, just because there's an opportunity to actually realize development as opposed to being stuck behind this high-tech light industrial use restriction that isn't a desire or there's no market for it. Now, this isn't to say we don't need it and that it doesn't work, even though it's in the urban growth area. We've got PNNL out there in the on the future land use map designated HTLI, and that is a perfect use for that type of a designation. And so there's opportunities, but maybe they're just not as great as they were hoped to be when the zone and designation were initially established. So we are looking at maybe even including some updates to the use table for things, that are still consistent with maybe industrial. So think like breweries, cideries, and things like that could work in this type of a location and wouldn't be off-putting there. but that could actually spark some development that otherwise wouldn't happen. So just some minor tweaks to see if we can get somebody interested. We have had a couple of businesses move into the zone in the last year, but nothing huge. Just a couple like general contractors. Again, great use for the zone, and that's where they should be. But nothing that they were already developed properties. So nothing on new property or new development. They're just taking over existing spaces. So, any questions about the HTLI specifically? All right. So highway commercial, this is a rather niche zone and designated area. It is, as you can obviously tell, it is located around our interchanges. So we've got the highway commercial zone and designation around River Road, around the Squim Ave interchange, and then around the hopefully someday Simdars interchange, full interchange. It's a lovely half interchange. I don't want to disparage it. But we've got, yeah, we did have a couple of requests to go to HC. So we had, as I kind of mentioned with the HTLI slide, we had an HTLI property owner that wanted to become HC, and their property is adjacent a hotel and dining establishment. So totally consistent with the zone and with the designated area. So we recommend that one, as it'll just, it'll open up that as an opportunity to further develop there. And just kind of and it's consistent with what's already developed there. So not anything too crazy. And then there's an RC property owner that wanted to become highway commercial, and kind of the inverse of what I talked about previously of an HC wanted to become RC. This one was an RC that it was feeling constrained because it was a small RC lot. And so they felt like it was restrictive in the sense that they weren't going to be able to attract the type of use or business on a small parcel designated for large commercial use. So they were thinking that going to a smaller zone and designation would be beneficial. But this is where by us including some of those uses that are allowed in the HC into the RC, you don't need to do a redesignation. We'll update the uses to maybe make it a little bit easier to develop. And that we think that makes more sense than doing the full redesignation and taking a piece of RC off and switching it to HC. So any questions on the HC? And I guess some of the things we're proposing is it's not a full blend of the neighborhood business and highway commercial, because they are both very they're in very specific parts of town, but we are kind of merging those uses a little bit. So there will be more kind of office or personal service uses allowed in the HC that hopefully can drive some more interest there. Any questions on the HC? All right. So heavy commercial warehouse, not our biggest zone. There's only 5 acres of it. And a good chunk of it is the city shop and and I believe some PUD infrastructure. And so as part of the update to public, those are coming off of heavy commercial warehouse and going to public. And then the remaining heavy commercial warehouse are just going to remain. There's not a huge desire to increase these ones. So we're just leaving them where they're at, and no real major zoning changes for this one either. So this one will stay pretty much status quo. Any questions on that one?
So on this map, the ones that are everything that's green on here is already, all of the property that is owned by the city and the PUD has already been changed to green on what we're looking at. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, City of Squim, Clallam County, Clallam PUD, school district, and I believe some washed out properties as well. And Pete, you can correct us if we missed any. So, Yeah. We got the treatment center in there, so. All right, we can go to the next one. Lifestyle, another one that's I personally love this designation in this zone. It's a very good mixed use zone. I think it was thought out well when it was established. I don't think we have any major updates for it. We'll do some bulk and dimensional standards updates. We'll clean up the zoning table so it's easier to administer. But for the sake of the future land use map and zoning updates, I think it works really well as it is, and we are not proposing anything major to it. Any questions about the lifestyle district? And I guess I'll add, it's a mixed use zone. It allows residential from single family up to apartments and service and offices, restaurants. It's a pretty cool zone.
You need to make it a chain, an addition to this one for the new park, though.
So let's see. I think the park should be
right next to the LD.
Yeah, let's see where. Oh, yeah. So that one. Thank you. We'll want to make that green. The park we recently acquired. Thank you. I knew there was going to be one. Perfect. Yeah. All right. Next one. All right. I think we're getting down there. Neighborhood business. So this is a very specific designated area. It is up there off of the Port Williams and Old Olympic roundabout. There are three corners of it are NB, which is neighborhood business. The actual uses of them are marginally consistent with neighborhood business, but it's there. And, I think our belief is neighborhood business works better when it's incorporated into neighborhoods rather than as its own kind of zone and use. And being that this is a neighborhood business is supposed to serve neighbors and neighborhoods, and this is kind of on the outskirts of town, it is a little bit odd, but it's there. And, we don't hate the uses that are allowed there, but we are going to include, as I kind of alluded to, a bit of a blending of the highway commercial and the neighborhood business to kind of more established uses that are consistent in these locations. I mean, this is an entrance to the city from the county. It's off of Old Olympic Highway, which it does say highway. So this is, similar to our highway commercial zones that are at the interchanges. This has the opportunity to provide some of those same services for members of the community that do live in the county but are coming into Sequim. So, a use that you could see that I have up there is, it may be a gas station, right? It doesn't mean that one's coming, but something like that could work there. There has been interest in the past, nothing solid, but yeah, I mean, just trying to make it make a little bit more sense and work, because there's been a lot of stretching, I think, of this code in the last 6 years to try to make uses work in there. And I think we would like to be able to just administer it the way it should be. Any questions on that one? All right. So the PRC, so this is the planned resort community. It's about 76.2 acres or so, give or take. There are no future land use map changes proposed with this one, but there are going to be some updates through zoning code, just for, consistent with all the work that you've been hearing about with the moratorium and things. The reason for the moratorium is to get this all squared away and figured out so we can move forward as necessary. But no major changes other than trying to get clarity and making it easier to administer. Any questions on this one?
I'm just curious in terms of just the legend here, that triangle at the bottom of the PRC that extends out to the bay.
Yes.
And crosses. Is that the estuary there?
No. So you can kind of see the estuary is a little circle to the left of the bay. You can kind of, there's a lighter shade of blue. So the estuary, it is all within the zone or the designated area, and the extension into the bay is just because that's where the parcel boundaries. And so parcel boundaries they'll have the same designation as onshore. So it does extend to that point, but so if you go up, so that is UGA. That's urban growth area. So that's just a.
Gotcha. That's
Yep.
outside the city. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. All right. Any other questions on that one? No? Okay. So this is one that we've only recently started talking about. It's not this is just a true take the temperature of the room. We're not recommending anything, but we are just trying to see kind of where you guys fall on this. As we've talked about over the past year, the RC has a lot of benefit to the city for what it is, what it brings. We are very fortunate to be kind of the retail hub of the peninsula, as it does allow for us to have a very nice tax base. So by taking about 5.5 acres off of RC through redesignating that CMU, we thought it was worth at least having the conversation of, hey, there's some UGA property here. It's vacant. There is one, I believe, one home, and the there's an old farm barn also there. So 2 of the parcels have structures on them. The other 3 are vacant. And as far as from a usability standpoint, we think this would have a greater opportunity to potentially develop for RC than the parcel that is going off or that we are recommending to become CMU. And now keep in mind, this is in the urban growth area. So just because we changed the pre-zone, if you will, to RC, it is still governed by county zoning until the time that it is annexed. However, if we don't do anything on this and somebody wants to annex it, it'll go in as low density residential as it is currently designated. And our thought is that low density residential across from Walmart and potentially across from other future, regional commercial development doesn't make the most sense. Those are kind of the opposite ends of the intensity spectrum. So just trying to see, is there an appetite to consider this, and we'll kind of just see where it goes. But it could become usable if there was a property owner interested, wanting to annex, and then potentially put a box store there. So any questions on that one specifically? Any thoughts? Yays, nays? No?
This is Brackett and Priest, right?
Correct.
Yeah, means it's not real clear.
Yeah. So, yep, directly east of Walmart, off north of Brackett.
So Travis, when you talk about taking the temperature of the room, not talking specifically at this meeting now, you're just kind of put it out there, planning commission will look at this and.
Yeah, I mean, I think we want to know, is this something that we should continue to push for? Is there interest in it? Should staff continue to, because we haven't reached out to the property owners, right? And like I mentioned earlier, anything we do, we want to check in, right? So if it's something council's open to, we could reach out, send something out to the property owners and see what's their interest, and if we get an overwhelming no, then it's all right, no harm, no foul. It is what it is. But if there's interest, maybe we've got the comp plan and the future land use map opened right now. And so the timing's good to do this. And then if there is a prospective developer, they don't have to wait for the process to open back up again and do it. It's already done. They would still have to annex it, of course, but which is its own process in and of itself.
Is there, and I think one of my fellow counselors said, thank you for indulging this land use 101 course. But maybe there's something kind of between residential or like that's not the low density residential, but isn't full or doesn't go all the way to resident or regional commercial. But kind of leaves, it's like somewhere in between those two, because those are two extremes.
Sure.
So what about what would the community mixed use one?
Yeah, and I think the reason we landed on RC was just based on past conversations where we wanted the RC to be RC and to not because there was I lobbed it out probably a year ago or so, like, what about doing multifamily in the RC? And it didn't really land very well. It was like, no, we want RC to be RC. Like, we want the big box stores to be able to have the space that they need. And if we change it to something else, then, will we get housing that maybe takes the place of what should be set aside for regional commercial? So I'm not saying no, I'm just kind of giving you the why we landed on RC for this one, because we were taking about 5.5 acres from RC to CMU already. And so this is about 9-ish acres. So it seemed like an opportunity to kind of make the trade where everything kind of stays the same. We're getting housing over here in the area, but we're not losing the opportunity for more box stores. So, I mean, again, like I said, just taking the temperature. So happy to bring forward.
Because in regional commercial zoning, developers could still build high density housing? No, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand exactly what you're saying.
So RC currently, there's no allowance for housing. And so we talked about potentially, I think back at the work, it was about a year ago, so it was a while ago, kind of just pitched it as like is there any interest in this? And there wasn't a whole lot of traction for putting housing in the RC, because it was kind of discussed that RC should be for RC. And so that didn't happen. And we're keeping RC, but that's why we're comfortable doing the redesignation of one of the parcels to CMU, so that we can get some housing over there without necessarily, and it's on a parcel that probably isn't suited for a large box store. So by allowing housing to go on that one that we looked at earlier, gets us the housing in the area, but we're not necessarily losing a spot that could be for a large box store if they were interested. And so then this site was viewed as maybe it's better suited for a larger box store because it's a little bit bigger, of course. And then it's not a 1-to-1, of course, but it is at least like, hey, we are getting rid of some RC, but we could potentially get some back here. So that was just a thought based on past meetings and discussions. But yeah, I mean, the whole point of this is to kind of see where you guys are at, and then we can go forward.
Interesting to contemplate.
Yeah.
The observation I want to make is that there's already some regional commercial, those two properties on the north side of Washington Street there, and they're right there in the slide behind me, is that they're empty. There's designated regional commercial, but hasn't been any of that kind of development. So I don't know. I'm seeing both sides of the coin here. I think there's opportunity for lots more discussion on this.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with you, Harmony. I think just where that property is, to me, it makes more sense for CMU, but I'm also not a city planner, so.
Thank you.
I appreciate the trade-off between the two parcels in you trying to keep it balanced. And also your point's well taken that this is the opportunity while you have the comprehensive plan open, so that it's no guarantee anything's going to happen unless it's annexed, but it at least puts out the possibility.
I think it fits in there very well, actually. Just makes sense.
I'd want to know what the property owner thinks first because it would negate the entire conversation. So that'd be my first step. At least I know there's an idea floating around about what it might be. But
Yeah.
we'd like their thoughts on the
Their
matter.
input. Yeah. So just to reiterate, yes, we will absolutely reach out to the property owners before making any sort of recommendation. So if that is kind of the logical next step, happy to do that and kind of see what the response is. We have some time, not a lot of time, but we can see what we can do.
Thank you. And I was just, the thought pops in my mind because housing next to the regional commercial district makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
And so that's why I hesitate.
Yeah.
I feel like maybe we should leave it more open to the offering all the different types of housing that we need to be able to say we are able to offer.
Sure.
So that's why I hesitate. But yeah, thank you. Like I said,
Yeah.
It's opportunity for so much more discussion on that parcel.
Cool. Thank you.
Brandon's right. We should ask the property owner, but is this where the old Rob farmhouse is?
Yes, I believe so.
So it was moved to there, just so you know that.
Okay. Yeah, and I do believe somebody lives there now. They're not in the structure, but I think they have a trailer because it's in the county, so they're able to do that there right now. So I mean, yes, we'll have to talk to them, and then I think the other 4 parcels are all owned by a single family, or at least an LLC of family, an estate. Yeah. Okay. Well, any last questions on any of the things we talked about? Any of the zones, redesignations? That was kind of a lot. So it's not the last time we talked about it, but yeah. All right. So go ahead. Next steps. So that's what we're doing right now. We're getting your input on our approach. And then so we'll take this feedback and we'll make some additional changes. And I think it is our intent to have like an actual baked staff report based on all of our recommendations for these updates by March. So by the end of this month, we should have like a full, here's what we're planning to do. So we'll try to move kind of quickly on reaching out to those property owners to see if we can get any sort of feedback. And of course, this has to make the rounds. It has to go get recommended by Planning Commission, and then it'll come back for actual approval with you guys with the comp plan. So again, I think it looks like staff reports for April. So I'm trying to get ahead of myself. I'm still going to try for March, but they're due April, and then we'll have our hearings in May and June, and then the code updates. I'm trying to also get that all done by March. So that's a full rewrite of our Title 18 after we just did a full rewrite of our Title 17. So lots to be done between now and June. So this was a great introduction and won't be the last that you see of me. So thank you. I appreciate it. And if you have any other questions or comments, happy to answer them. But if not, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Travis. Okay, well, next under reports, we have Youth Liaison report.
For purpose of the record, this is Youth Liaison Layla Sundin speaking. It's been a little bit of a slow couple of weeks. We have our knowledgeable qualifying tournament this Thursday. There's no school this Friday or next Monday, the 16th. for President's Day weekend, and they just give us a 4-day weekend because they felt like being nice. The senior class play was unfortunately canceled, but the operetta begins rehearsal for The Wizard of Oz this week, which is very exciting. And our flag football team placed, I think, 4th in state, and it's our first year ever having a flag football team. So that was really exciting. They did really well this year. Winter Ball was on the 24th of January, and I think it went pretty well. I wasn't there, but I heard it went well. Solo ensemble and girls and boys. Wait. Yeah. All of the teams placed at regionals, and boys and girls basketball team just beat PA, which is great, on Friday, January 30th. And then the high school is doing several fundraisers around Valentine's Day: skiing-grams, candy-grams, flower-grams, and teddy bear-grams. All different organizations and classes and clubs to make some money. And I think that's it. Also, for the purposes of the record, this is Lily Chemsland.
I don't see Matt Hewish online. At least not on here. You've all received the city manager report.
You've received a city manager report, purposes of the record, Christina Nelson Gross, as I believe Matt has emailed you all earlier. He is on vacation and I am, quote, standing in. And so you've all received his city manager report. And if you have any questions, I will do my level best to answer them, but may in fact need to refer to the appropriate department or department director for further information.
Any questions at this time? No? Okay. City Council committee reports. Dan, the Homelessness Task Force report. Did you have any additional comments?
No, I just commend the report that I submitted earlier. A little bit got lost in formatting, if that's important to you. There's kind of the head bullet point starting with the name Sam Schroeder, and then the next 2 are subpoints under that, if that will help you kind of read through it. But that's the most significant aspect of the Homelessness Task Force meeting last week was a presentation from the Washington State Department of Commerce on the pause in the implementation of the HUD, federal level HUD change in their program that would fund the majority of what the county is doing for our homeless neighbors. Did receive, and this kind of ties back to Travis's report, how appreciative Serenity House is of the city of Sequim's cooperation and partnership on the renovation and expansion of that Sunbelt apartment complex that they're wanting to work out. And then finally, the Boys and Girls Club, we listened to a really encouraging presentation, and particularly focusing on their program for at-risk youth as it relates to homelessness in the county. And it was just made me very pleased that we committed what we were able to commit out of our municipal fund that we worked out there. And then finally, a new member of the task force. The county commissioners are being recommended a representative from the faith community. There are several open seats, but this one has been open for a long time. And we're pleased to recommend Michael Shansi from the OUUF onto the task force. So thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Really appreciate it. Appreciate your work with this committee and your reports. Just wanted to speak up for Mike Shanzi because I know him through, and the spelling of his last name's incorrect, but that's all. It's okay. It's okay. Thank you so much.
Any other committee reports? Okay. We are going to move on to open council discussion. You've probably seen the emails kind of going back and forth. I'm sorry, Rachel's very sorry she couldn't be here. The intent was to come up with a community statement regarding the city's position, the council's position on immigration enforcement. And I know it's been discussed in the past year, but what we're looking for is, would we like the language as has been suggested, and put into a proclamation form? Harmony's had a chance to comment on some of this. Christina, I don't know if you'd like to provide some guidance.
Thank you very much for that opportunity, Nicole. Staff definitely recommend the proclamation process. The original draft had some signatory spaces for the city manager and for Chief Hill, and for a variety of reasons, and it has nothing to do with this issue, but just from a process and an operational division perspective, it is staff's strong recommendation that you do this as a proclamation, because this is really something that the council, if you choose to move forward with it, is talking about your voice, your position as the city council. You know, we as staff, we are bound by the laws and the rules, not just here from city council, but also from Washington state. So, you know, while we may have feelings on a particular issue, oftentimes staff prefer not to be in the forefront, right, of that policy making arena. And so therefore, you know, staff would strongly encourage you to, again, keep this at the proclamation level, have as long and vigorous discussion as you so choose on this matter. But ultimately, we would encourage you to have it take the proclamation form and not have staff input in terms of, you know, signatories or any things like that. If you have specific questions on such, for example, as what a specific RCW does, we can provide assistance there, but we don't want to be viewed as signatories or, for lack of a better word, participants in a policy document.
Thank you. That certainly makes sense. It leaves me the question as I look at this draft, is it appropriate for us to amend what we understand the posture of the chief is, for example, in supporting the joint statements from the Association of Police Chiefs and so on? I mean, is that crossing that boundary that you're wanting to stay clear of?
I think that, and I'm going to try to channel my inner police chief here, but I think that his preference would be for staff to be removed from that. If he were put on the spot, I would say that that would be his statement. But again, you know, we try to stay out of that political fray to the extent possible. And you know, again, while we're happy to assist, I would suggest council be very careful in attributing words to staff, because then that necessarily makes staff part of that policy statement.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Christina and Dan. And I see what you're saying. I think that I imagine this was probably written by Rachel. And it's great. It's wonderful. And I think she was using a similar or using the press release that was sent out by the city of Port Townsend, perhaps as a example of what we could be saying. And in this, I don't know if you have seen it yet, Christina. Oh, okay. So in the final paragraph of the press release, so it's a press release sent out from the city of Port Townsend administration, which to me sounds like the city. And the contact person at the top is their city manager, John Morrow. And in the final paragraph, it says, Mayor Amy Howard, City Manager John Morrow, and Chief Thomas Olson want all Port Townsend residents to know that no one in our community should fear calling 911 for help due to their immigration status. We are here to protect everyone. So I think that I think that there's a lot of wisdom to what you're saying, but I can see how this document was, if this was indeed part of the inspiration for creating this document, that may have informed some of the language there.
And I can certainly appreciate that, and thank you for that bit of knowledge. But I do know that in speaking with Chief Hill, he has indicated they're not getting calls and concerns and things like that from our population. He's got a very good rapport. He and Deputy Chief Southard have very good rapport with a lot of the protest organizers of all various things. And so, we actually, I don't know if council saw it, but I think it was not this last Sunday, but I think it was the Sunday before, where there was actually a rave in the paper, in the Peninsula Daily News, showing appreciation for the Sequim Police Department and their presence during all of these varying protests, because it made them feel calm and made them feel safer. So, I do, my personal opinion is that I think we're incredibly lucky to have such a community that is willing to engage in dialogue and respect each other's rights for freedom of speech and protests, not to, don't want to jinx this, but not to resort to things that we've been seeing in other areas. And so, I can't speak to the reasons why the city of Port Townsend policymakers and administration felt the need to issue a press release. I think that if that is council's direction, I would request that we table this until city manager could be returned from vacation and we review this a little bit further. But I know that in my discussions with Chief Hill and with the city manager before this meeting tonight, the sentiment was, and our preference would be, to have this be a city council proclamation. And then it still reaches the community through all of its traditional endeavors through social media and whatever our normal processes are for proclamation.
I would agree, and I'd like to see Mayor Anderson back as well with the city manager, and maybe this can be wordsmithed to be coming from the council's perspective, and then we would perhaps just need staff's help in wordsmithing to make sure it's factual and accurate according to our policies and the state law.
Yeah, and Heather is going to correct me on this, and I believe the sponsoring counselor is typically the one that is responsible for the majority of that wordsmithing. We will look for factual or grammatical errors and things like that, but we do not participate in that drafting for all of the reasons that I've already mentioned. And because it blurs the lines between policy and operations. And as you all know, City Manager Matt has tried very hard to make sure that we have and respect those lines appropriately. And again, this is regardless of staff's personal feelings on this. We operate within the bounds of the law. And if council wants to speak to the policy issues out there, it absolutely could, and the proclamation is the perfect vessel in which to do that.
Thank you, Christina. I have forwarded you the link to the City of Port Townsend's press release that was received by council. So thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Harmony.
Does anybody else have any comments on this? Otherwise, it's a really good segue into agenda planning meeting, because we can bring this back at the agenda planning meeting where Rachel will be here and Matt will be here, and then bring it forward at another meeting. Along those lines, it's Wednesday, February 18th at 9 a.m. Is there anybody else who would be interested in attending, Pete? Okay.
Go ahead. Yeah, I was just gonna, I'm interested in this topic. I'm not available to attend a agenda planning meeting. So if you want more input without exceeding the number of people that can participate in the meeting without it being a public meeting, then I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
Thank you. I just wanted to kind of follow up because Wednesdays at 9:00, I'm working my day job. So I can't be, if it was absolutely necessary, I could attend a Wednesday 9:00 thing, but I would, so no worries. Go ahead, Pete, if you're interested.
Yeah, it sounds like Pete and myself and Rachel will be there then. And I guess if you have anything that you'd like to contribute to that, you could send it to Heather. Okay. Monday, February 23rd, we have a City Council executive session at 5:00 p.m. And then the next regular City Council meeting is also on the 23rd at 6:00 p.m. Anything else for the good of the order? Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor? Have a good evening.